You want to be successful in anything, in a career, especially in sales where there's so much rejection. You just have to have that self-belief. You have to find it somewhere. And it can't come from outside. It has to come from inside.
Exciting guest today. We have a Josh Norris on the Startup Sales Podcast. Good to see you, man. He's joining us from San Francisco. And currently, he's working with a lot of early stage startups, usually SaaS. And Josh, I think you will introduce yourself better than me. So tell us a bit more about yourself.
Happy to.
About your journey in sales and startups.
Yeah, of course, Tom. I'm the founder advisor, strategic advisor, and go-to-market fractional operator for early stage startups. So founders and founding teams bring me in to help them build their very first go-to-market motion, everywhere from building out that MVP, trying to find those early users and paying customers, all the way up to building your first sales team, bringing in a full-time executive to scale it, everything in between.
Yeah, and how you started your career in sales? What was the story?
Well, my career in sales started halfway through my career as a whole. I started in product management. I had a startup of my own. I worked in CS for a while, moved into cybersecurity consulting, and then stumbled into sales. I think most people stumble into sales these days. But I found my way into sales in 2019. And then I've stayed there ever since, and I love it.
Great. And is there any particular philosophy that guides your approach, currently working with startups?
Yeah, there are a couple. The first one I would say is I've nearly died twice in my life. Just in the last 7 years, I had a really bad car accident that stopped my whole career in 2016. I was on bed rest for over a year, recovering from that. And then the second time was just this past year in 2023. I had a really, really severe case of long COVID, autoimmune and neurological issues as a result of COVID. I was unable to walk from one room to the next without collapsing, hyperventilating, just out for the rest of the day, just from trying to move around. And the doctors had no idea what was going on. They were completely helpless in trying to help me. And I had to recover on my own, basically. So having gone through things like that, I had to put my career back together again, started my business after I got better, after I recovered. I developed this stubborn, uncanny belief that if I want to do something, I'm going to go do it. I still have imposter syndrome in the back of my mind, and I still lean on people in my life, my family, my friends, and mentors to encourage me and remind me that I can do something. But I've always got this uncanny belief that I'm capable of figuring this out. I can do this. And it's a result of those two life experiences in my adult life. That's the first thing. You want to be successful in anything, in a career, especially in sales where there's so much rejection. You just have to have that self-belief. You have to find it somewhere. And it can't come from outside. It has to come from inside, as easy as that sounds. So that's one thing. I believe that if I step my sights on something, I can achieve it. I just have to figure out how. And I need to figure out who can help me to get there. I'd say the second belief, second belief and principle that I follow in sales is that if you give first and if you give enough, the world will take care of you. You'll find your people. You'll find people who believe the same things you believe and people who want to see you succeed. And then, you can all raise each other up. I really believe that. I think those are the guiding principles that have gotten me where I am. I don't really take no for an answer from myself. I'm going to let the world reject me before I reject myself, and I'm just going to go do it. And then I'm always trying to help other people because a lot of people have helped me in my career.
Wow. Actually, those near-death experiences really shakes things up for people.
It does. It shakes up your life. It shakes up your health, your mental health. that car accident in 2016, I spent the better part of that next year when I was recovering thinking my life was over. Like, am I going to be able to walk again normally? Am I going to be able to run again? The doctors told me that I would never be able to run. They told me that I would never be able to do anything that had a lot of like vertical impact on your spine. I don't have discs between 3 of my vertebrae, so 2 discs were just crushed. And I can run now. I started swimming. I can run now. I don't swim anymore, but I got that mobility back and that strength back. And then the long COVID thing this past year, being told by doctors, like, we don't know how to fix this. No one knows how to fix this. And we can't help you because if we recommend something off label and it goes wrong, we lose our license, right? That was incredibly discouraging. But I had that same feeling, like my life might be over. You know, I couldn't think straight. I couldn't do anything physical. I couldn't move really. But I just didn't accept that. And I did a bunch of research. I read clinical studies. I read journal studies. I read anecdotes on Reddit to find things that were working for people. And I did about 12.5 experiments, and like 3 of them worked, and now I'm all better. So yeah, I just don't take failure for an answer until I've tried everything I possibly can.
Incredible. And let's talk about go-to-market. Yep. So could you explain the concept of go-to-market and why founders should care about that?
Well, if you want to get paid, you have to go to market. Like, it's a fundamental part of business, obviously. You're going to have to find your unique go-to-market strategy based on what you're selling and who you're selling to. Every company is going to be slightly different, but every company has to have a strategy. You have to figure out who are the people that are going to pay me money for this thing? How do I get in front of them? What do I say? How do I guide those conversations? And then once they make that initial payment to you, that investment with you, how do I nurture that relationship? How do I continually provide value to them and, you know, grow them into long-term customers? The importance of go-to-market isn't really what's up for debate. What's up for debate is how we do it.
Well said. And how you do it, that's a follow-up question. You know, how you help the founders to build a repeatable process in so rapidly changing environment. We can all agree the sales is changing so much. And Josh, so how you do it?
You start with what you've built and the problem you're targeting to solve. Who has that problem? Building some personas out. Once you know who you're going to try to sell to, then you figure out, like, where do they spend their time online? What's the best way to get in front of these people? What do I need to say to very quickly, like within the first 10 seconds of a conversation, make them think, oh, wait, this person's different. I should actually listen to this person. Because most people don't like to listen to salespeople, and founders are included in that. You don't really want to listen to people who are trying to sell you something. You don't always trust them, and you don't always think that they're worth the time to prioritize. So I work with my clients on strategic narrative, figuring out the story to tell from your product and how it's going to be changing something in their life. I work with my clients on targeting, finding your ideal customers and figuring out how do we get in front of them. And then we start experimenting with stuff. We do like early access groups. We do different go-to-market strategies to get in front of people. And then, you know, closing a couple deals that we think are really, really good fits and then working from there. But it's a lot of experimentation. It's a lot of business acumen and experience from being, you know, interacting with these people for a long time. And then it's a lot of strategy around how you tell the right story.
Okay. And what kind of common mistakes you see that founders do with go-to-market strategy, and what will be your advice to avoid them?
Number one mistake I see founders make is taking advice from the wrong people online, on LinkedIn, for example. everyone's businesses are different. For example, there's all the debate right now about what's going to happen to the SDR role with AI and with the upheaval we've had in the past couple of years. What's that role going to look like in the future? The answer is there are going to be a bunch of different answers for different types of companies. If you're a really, really small company, then you don't need SDRs necessarily. You could do more full cycle. You could do a little more PLG. I don't mean if you're a small company. I mean if you're selling small contract value deals, transactional deals into like SMB, even lower mid-market, specialized roles are becoming less needed because what the SDR did there prior, lots of emails, lots of calls, that can be more automated with AI and in a way that still has quality. That can be replaced entirely with other channels like warm leads coming through your website and de-anonymizing website traffic. That can be replaced with a lot of content creation, TikTok, LinkedIn, things like that. Those types of SDRs, if you still have an SDR function in those types of companies selling smaller deals, you're doing more marketing, you're doing more content creation, engaging inbound leads, engaging warm leads. That's one way that role could look. But if you're in a larger company or selling to larger companies, larger ACV deals, you're going to be multi-threading a lot more within accounts. You might have an SDR who partners with your AE, and that SDR's sole job is to multi-thread within an account where there's already an active op. That's a job description that's being made now. And it's really important because there are more people involved in the buying committee for these deals than ever before. So it's really important to be able to multi-thread like that and start those relationships, those conversations much earlier. And then full cycle, once you're in larger ACV deals, enterprise deals, full cycle reps still have a place, but you can specialize a lot more and create like a strategic SDR who's been an SDR for 4 years and they're really highly paid. Their whole job is opening those accounts and they've got the business experience to do it. It's no longer your entry-level SDR who's hired more or less out of college trying to book calls with the C-suite at an enterprise company. They have more experience and more business acumen to have those types of conversations. So the SDR as a career is also becoming a lot more prominent.
Yeah, it's actually a really good gateway to tech sector.
Yeah. Well, it was a gateway to the tech sector. Now getting SDR roles in any company is a lot more competitive. So sales roles outside of tech are a lot more required, more expected. Vets Recruiting puts out a bunch of data about this. The experience requirements that they're looking for the average SDR role are rising. The compensation for the average SDR role is rising. And the tenure that companies expect SDRs to keep before looking for a promotion is getting longer. So it's becoming a real career position, a professional position, which it on average wasn't until the past couple of years.
Okay. And so you said that, founders are, reading stuff on LinkedIn, they're getting a bad advice, but how the founder should navigate the fast-paced sales world, and what would be your advice to founders, where to find the reliable information or how to know what things are changing, what kind of trends they should look after, where they should find a reliable source of information to make right decisions in the go-to-market strategy?
So I'm biased because I just changed my whole career into being a fractional operator and an advisor for startups, but I did that for a reason. That's where you're going to find the best talent and the best information for things like that. I'm not saying hire me, but hire someone who knows your ICP backwards and forwards, has sold to them before, has built products for them before, has built go-to-market motions that sell to them before. Get an advisor early on. I actually just got off a call right before coming to talk to you today from a company that is looking for an advisor, and they sell sales tech and like an AI product into sales tech. And they're talking with me about it. And they're like, we're still building code. We've been building since, I think, September. We're not really sure when we need to bring an advisor on. When should we do that? It's like, you need to be talking to early users now, getting feedback from users, finding new ones to come test your product, who you can then line up to be paying customers once you do a launch. You need to have that feedback coming from your market. And part of that is having an advisor. Talk to people you already know, other founders, other go-to-market leaders that are already in your network. Get their advice, people who've done it before. That's the best way. You can find good advice on LinkedIn. You just have to know where that advice is coming from. Did this person build a company at the same stage as mine, selling to the same people as mine, a similar type of product as mine? Really filter by that before you start just taking advice from random people online. And then, build those relationships within your network and it'll come to you. I think there are many founders out there who have solved these problems and are working on the same problems now. And I think there are many good advisors out there. So it's not like a diamond in the rough. It's just a matter of getting out there, building those relationships.
Yeah, very, very solid advice. And, when the founder starts, the startup and the sell, right, it's going well because founder is selling with the charisma, with passion, with energy, but it's limited, right? You hit the ceiling quite fast. When it's time to build your sales team, what are the signs that you need to start doing that and how to do it properly? What would be your take on that?
It's usually going to be after the founder thinks. That's the number one thing. You start thinking, maybe it's time to hire a salesperson and I can start putting this off on them. It's usually after that point for most founders. You want to make sure that you've got product market fit for sure, which means you need to be talking to your users, talking to your customers, talking to leads coming in, figuring out, do they think we do the thing we actually do, or is there a misconception for leads coming in? And then your longtime users, are we actually solving the problem? If we took the product away today, would they just get really mad and they want it back? And there are a bunch of different things you can look at to gauge whether that's the case, but overall, that's what you're looking for. Product adoption metrics can help, whether you're increasing in usage or staying flat, how quickly you can get them on the phone if you want to call and talk to your customers, a bunch of other data you can look at. But until you know you have that product market fit to where you're a must-have now, you're not a nice to have. Until you reach that point, 100% sure, you really should think twice about bringing in salespeople. And then when you do bring in the salespeople, it takes a particular set of skills to be able to sell that early as well.
Yeah, and then follow-up question, product market fit is the holy grail of startup. It's kind of a bit of the mysterious thing. When do you know that you have a product market fit?
It's not one thing. There's not one answer to that question. You're going to know you have product market fit when you have a lot of users who cannot imagine doing their job anymore without your product in one way or another. How you measure that is going to be different for every product. It's going to be a lot of product usage data of different kinds. Like I said, it's going to be a lot of customers talking about your product to other people on their own, especially openly online. I work mainly with sales tech AI companies. So if they're on LinkedIn, which they need to be, and I push them all to do that if they aren't, if they're on LinkedIn, do you see their users talking about the product independently on LinkedIn? That's another gauge. Basically what you're looking for though is, if I were to take this away from you, how mad would you be? And if they're like, hell no, don't take it away. Please don't take it away. That's a good indicator that you're close to product market fit.
Okay, yeah. I used to work with
That's a simplistic answer.
Yeah. Yeah, actually have one story for my experience. I used to work in the solar engineering software startup in very early of my career. And after 2 years, actually, one of the biggest energy companies in the world included the software in their playbook, how to design a solar park, in like 100 pages playbook, right? And then that was a sign that, okay, we have something here now. So, and people would be super mad, engineers would be super mad if you would uninstall that plugin from their AutoCAD.
Yeah.
That's one of the...
I mean, I can imagine that's a very different way of gauging product market fit. But it ends up in the same place, which is that emotional response. If I take this product away from you, how mad are you going to be? If they're like clawing at your product to keep it, that's the definition of product market fit if you ever had one. is your market will not let it go, and they don't want to imagine doing their job without it.
Absolutely. And let's get back a bit to building sales team. Can you share a practical example from your career that founder built a successful long-term sales team, and how did it impact, the performance of his startup ultimately?
Yeah, totally. So my career, I'll go back 2 companies, and I'll tell a story from my actual career, and then I can also tell another story from a client as well. 2 companies ago, I was working at a company called Instabug. They make software that mobile app developers use. They started PLG. The founders were talking to a lot of users. It was smaller companies buying the software, a lot of online signups that never interfaced with the founding team, that sort of situation, sort of trying to go up market over time. The users loved it though. Great feedback on the product. NPS scores from like automated surveys and stuff in product were high, and conversations with users were also going really well. I guess a side note, you should always have both of those channels for feedback. You need to be talking to users one-on-one, and you also need to have feedback coming from in product. So anyway, they wanted to go up market. So they ended up hiring on a VP of sales first, which is one way to do it. Probably not the most reliable way to do it, who had sold a similar product. He came from Datadog. He brought in some of his team. They were selling to enterprise, and he brought in me to build out the mid-market motion, figure out how to sell this thing mid-market. And we sort of worked concurrently together on it. He was building out more of enterprise deals, Verizon, PayPal, DoorDash, companies like that, using the software. I was selling more mid-market, where it was still very sales-led, but smaller ACV, and things moved a lot faster. The deals looked completely different as a result. That's one way you can do it, but notice that those hires were not made until users already loved the product. They had all the things they needed to serve larger accounts, security needs, customization, white labeling, things like that were built out for enterprise before they made those hires. And then when they hired people in, it was someone who had already built a sales team at another company selling into really similar personas. And then he actually brought people in that he knew. So they hired the executive for his network as well, which is another important thing to consider. And they brought me in to like bridge that gap in between, figure out how mid-market would work in between, which I did. And then let's see, how many years has it been now? 2, 3, 4 years later, I still see them online. I still talk to some of the people from there. They've brought in a CRO now who's running sales and marketing and CS. And that was right as I left, like 2 years ago, they brought him in. So they were continuing to build out the team and the infrastructure. They got a Series B round, and they've continued to grow. But they took their time before making those big hires. They've been doing great from what I can see. Stories from a client, I work with much earlier stage companies than that. Right now I'm working with one. They sell into non-tech teams, teams that have physical locations. So stadiums, casinos, airports, like facilities stuff. They've hired in one sales rep full-time first to help one of the co-founders. So the co-founder is still very heavily involved in every deal. And the sales rep is helping him doing outreach, following up with the leads and the prospects, saving the co-founder time, and then leading some calls on his own. And they've brought in 2 consultants. One consultant is booking a bunch of meetings, getting more leads in. The other consultant, me, is looking at all of the past data they have from past outreach and all the experimentation they've done over the past year to figure out what worked from all of that. And I'm helping them focus the team's efforts now to make sure they're doubling down on things that did work, doing new experiments that are like continuations of other ones that were working to find new tactics and new strategy that they can use. They are controlling costs that way, only one full-time rep. The consultant who's booking meetings right now, she's on a commission-only basis, and she's doing really well with it. And then I'm doing I'm the multiplier effect. I'm doing all that research to help them specialize what they're doing now and keep it focused. And I'm multiplying their productivity. Right now, they're bringing in a bunch of paying customers. They're thinking of doing a funding round this year, but they're not sure they even need to do it yet. So they're controlling costs. They're getting really clear answers on what has worked for us in the past. What does our sales motion look like right now? What are the steps we go through for every successful sale? What are the conversion rates at each of those steps? How do those all add up to be our win rate? What does top of funnel look like to feed into that machine? And once all of that is done and, predictable as best as it can be, that's where they will consider scaling further.
Okay, and what about unsuccessful examples?
Oh,
So many of them, right?
there are a lot more of those going around. I'm not going to go into a lot of details, but one story from another company that I worked with as a salesperson, failing to hire engineering soon enough. Because when you're really early stage, your users are very forgiving of bugs and things looking a little bit off. You're a small, scrappy team. They're very forgiving. But there comes a point when your users, especially new customers coming in, have a bigger idea of you than you really are because you're marketing really well, you're talking up your product and stuff. They're less tolerant of those bugs. They need better support. So you're going to spend a lot of time fixing technical debt that you built for yourself before. All of those bugs that you've tolerated, the minor ones, your UI not looking as crisp as it really should, all that stuff has to be fixed. Right around that time, you start building out a sales motion and trying to bring in better customers, so to say. Hiring engineering too late put this company in a situation where all of their engineers, their co-founder and the 2 engineers they had on the team at the time, all of them were fixing bugs all the time and updating the UI and trying to make it presentable. And that meant that their new product roadmap kept getting delayed. SOC 2 got delayed. Integrations got delayed. It shut down new releases for almost a year. And it's hamstrung the company. They weren't able to adapt during the recession that happened a couple of years ago. The past couple of years are very hard for them. And I don't actually know if they will be able to recover from that. So that's one warning. Hire engineering in time to be able to support all the needs that are going to come with that larger customer base. And then when you hire sales, I would say bring in someone who is able to build out your sales motion, who's done similar things before and can work within a very unstructured startup environment. Don't hire someone from big tech, for example. They need a lot more structure typically. And when you bring that person in, give them authority to execute. Don't micromanage them. Don't control every decision. Give them the ability to run with what they want to run with, and things will happen faster for you, and things will happen better for you. Those are my 2 big hazards that came from that story. And I don't think that company is doing too hot right now, but I guess we'll see. Time will tell.
Okay. Let's zoom out a bit, right? So how do you see go-to-market landscape changing in the next few years and let's say a decade ahead?
Let's look at trends that are already happening for the next couple of years. Then let's look at trends that have happened with other technologies in the past to predict 10 years out, maybe 20 years out. And then beyond there, it's almost impossible to tell because so much can change. And I'll explain what I mean. Over the next couple of years, we're going to have a separation in the sales. The sales profession is going to be pulled into 2 camps. One camp are going to be the people who failed to adapt to AI, didn't learn the right tools, haven't kept up with business acumen, which is understanding how businesses work and being able to carry a real business conversation with an executive. Failed to keep up with that and failed to keep up with building their own skills. Over the past decade in SaaS, I mean, SaaS was booming. It was a lot easier to get funding, so you could hire a bunch more people. That meant you tended to hire more inexperienced people. They didn't have that acumen. And then teams were able to send out cold outreach with a lot more success. Sales were easier to get also. All of that comes together to mean you don't have to have as professional and as experienced a sales team, right? So those people got laid off mostly over the past couple of years. The low performers, companies that weren't doing very well, maybe didn't train and teach their salespeople enough while they were there, didn't adapt to the change in the market fast enough. Those companies are struggling. And the more junior salespeople who were hired recently or companies that didn't foster their team's development, they're the ones that are struggling and got laid off. It's going to be really, really hard for that type of salesperson who hasn't kept up with teaching themselves and staying ahead of technology. It's going to be really hard for them to have steady employment in tech if they choose to stay in tech for the next 2 or 3 years. And that's going to become harder over that time period. The other side of that coin is you have salespeople who have business acumen and experience, who are ahead and or up to speed on the latest AI tools and testing new things all the time. They know how to use the tech to multiply their own productivity. Those people are going to be thriving in the coming years. And those companies that think like that are going to be thriving. You can look at small AI startups like, Clay. They're going to be doing really well. Companies that are consolidating tech stack and investing in building AI tools and investing in teaching their teams, like Apollo, doing really well. The next couple of years are going to be, they're going to win, right? But then there are all these other companies that are going to struggle. So the next few years, you're going to see that separation. Stay up on AI tools, stay up on teaching and learning yourself, and focus on business acumen, focus on being able to have a business conversation. That's how you survive the next few years. We're also going to see, I don't know when it will happen, but sometime in the next handful of years, AI become as proficient as humans at doing things that it can't right now, obviously. Writing emails that are indistinguishable. There are already tools coming out that are surprising people that were written by AI. Really good personalization coming out. Cold calling, where the AI is cold calling a buyer, trying to book meetings with them. Air.ai has really good technology for that right now, where if you know it's an AI going in, you can kind of tell. But if you're not told ahead of that call that it's an AI, you might not notice. Give it another year, indistinguishable. And if it's a trained model and it's got the right prompts and stuff, they'll be able to hold cold calls and book meetings with people decently well, certainly a lot cheaper than having headcount in your SDR team. So give that some more time, and we're going to be struggling to justify having sales teams doing things like that. Cold calling, emailing, prospecting, it's going to be largely automated. And I know it's kind of taboo to say that right now, but I think it's taboo on LinkedIn to say that because most of the people, at least in my little fishbowl on LinkedIn, are salespeople and they feel threatened. So get to know that technology and use that technology to your advantage. I'd say in 10 years, Dom, definitely 20 years, possibly 10 years, it will feel the same to have to talk to a human to buy SaaS as it does right now to call an airline to change your flight. It's why do I have to do this? Why can't I use an automated system? Why do I have to talk to some human who doesn't know me that well, isn't up to speed on what their product can do? They have to go ask their team questions to get answers for me. And it's hard to have this conversation. I don't trust you. Why do I want to talk to a human when I can just talk to the AI who can answer every question immediately, pick apart my whole problem, and explain with great detail and specificity exactly how I can use their product down to a very technical level faster? Why wouldn't I want that experience? That's going to happen. And I don't know when it will be mainstream, but it's going to be as mainstream as automated phone systems. It's going to be as mainstream as changing your flight details in an app instead of calling a person. The first versions of this are going to be terrible, and it's going to suck to use them, just like automated systems suck to use when they're new or when they're poorly implemented or carelessly implemented. So I do think we're going to have a lot of really bad experiences with this first, but it's going to get better. And in 10 or 20 years, I think it'll be the norm. Once you go beyond that point, you've got stuff like plugging your brain directly into chips and machines and computers like Neuralink is trying to do. That will get really elaborate. And then I was talking with someone just earlier today. What happens when we crack, I don't know, fusion energy? Or I read a study just the other day about some team, maybe they were at MIT, they were at some university that discovered a way to create a solar cell, like a solar panel cell that collected energy 1,000 times more efficiently than what's in current production. So if I can collect 1,000 times more energy per square meter in a solar panel, that's huge. If we crack one of those like plateaus that we've hit in energy production and energy storage, the world changes. If we're able to interface directly with computers and control online anything, avatars, all the way up to like making changes in your credit card account, whatever, just thinking about it, that changes the world. And that stuff's going to happen. So it's really hard to tell what sales will look like by then, but it's going to be completely different. I think that AI is as fundamental a change to society as the internet, as cloud software, which is radically huge at the time, 20, 30 years ago, 20 years ago. And then it's horseback riding to cars, that shit. It's as fundamental as that.
Yeah. And what about content, right? How it will influence sales? And I think the change is happening, right? So what is your take on that?
The last bastion of humanity, maybe. Like being able to get to know real people through the internet and how they think and their senses of humor, and like all of that comes down to content. Like people want to relate to other humans. And as these changes happen, that's where people are going to withdraw to, is content made by humans that is obviously not made by AI. So it's always going to be changing to stay ahead of what AI can do. It's going to be micro communities, maybe paid micro communities of like small Slack groups that you can join, and like very niche little communities that everyone there and you build real relationships with them. That will branch, and already has, into in-person events being a lot more wanted. Like people crave them now because of the pandemic, but they're going to crave them in 4 years because AI is everywhere and you can't get away from it. So I think all of those are going to be really important. If you don't have an online brand right now, you're like 4 years too late. Now is the best day to get started, second to yesterday. So do it. That's how people are going to really get to know you.
Okay. And how do you prepare founders to address these changes?
Yeah. Lots of conversations like this. Lots of helping them to learn to tell their story. I helped 4 companies in the past 2 weeks with strategic narrative. It's like, we've got this new technology. I see that it's an inevitable technology. 2 years from now, it's the norm. It's just a matter of who's going to build it. Now let's sit down and tell a story so that when you go on a call with someone new, within the first 10 seconds, to go back to what I said at the beginning, within the first 10 seconds, they're like, oh, wait, I need to pay attention here. This is different than all the other salespeople. Getting that story right is how you get people to give you their attention. And that's how you get them to take your product seriously. And that's how you get them to eventually become customers. And if you can't tell that story, as Andy Raskin is the best for learning about strategic narrative. He says, this is all from him. You're going from an old way of doing something to a new way of doing something. Fundamental shift in society. You have to be leading that shift, and you paint your competitors as not being prepared for that shift. He sort of described that concept. You have to tell your story like that. So I help founders get prepared for, these things that are coming by helping them tell their story in a way that puts their company at the front of that shift, and then helping them prepare their go-to-market motion to adapt to all the changes that are coming.
Yeah, actually, and the content can help you to build the trust, right?
Yeah,
Trust is huge, right, for
completely.
designers.
In a world where everyone is sending thousands of emails a week and robots are calling you on the phone trying to book meetings, and you can't go online without getting targeted ads everywhere, building those real relationships, building trust, like you said, through your content, it's so critical. And we're seeing rises in that trend in every industry. Product management and sales were really, really early and sort of getting bigger on LinkedIn and building communities on LinkedIn. Now finance leaders, CFOs, one of my clients sells to CFOs, like they're on LinkedIn and active, and it's finance folks. It's like not really the person you would expect to be the most active on social media, like posting stuff and talking to people. But that trend is happening across the board. Every industry is going to be affected. Every social media platform is going to have professionals and business people present and talking about work. It's just a matter of figuring out who are my buyers, which platforms are they on, where do they spend their time, and then how do I get to know these people?
Absolutely. And lastly, right, what would you recommend? Maybe some book or podcast or some kind of other resources for our audience to learn and to improve.
I was looking to see if I had any books on my desk here, but I don't. Justin Michael writes really good ones for outbound prospecting. Let's see, Nate Nasrallah writes probably the go-to textbook on or like reference book for enterprise sellers, selling with. It's like champion enablement as your entire focus. Really, really good concepts to learn for enterprise. Amy Volas has a book coming out this year that I've got my eye on. And then I would look at Winning by Design. They published a book and a bunch of content around revenue architecture, explaining how the shifts that happened over the past 20 years or so led us to where we are now in SaaS, and how that's going to be looking going forward, how the business models are changing, very, very technical concepts that are important to learn. Yeah, I think those are my top recommendations right now.
Great recommendations. I just finished to read all Ben Horowitz books. So it's more not focused on sales entirely, but it's really, really good to just generally understand the space of startups and actually how hard it is to do that and how to build a culture. Josh, thanks a lot for being today with us. And for the audience, if someone wants to get in touch with you, what is the best way to do that?
Hit me up on LinkedIn. I'm easy to find.
Okay.
It was a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Josh, thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.